Welcome, everybody, to Connecting the Universe. I'm author and researcher Mike Ricksecker, back at you with another interactive class out of the secret library of the Connected Universe. Really excited for tonight. We're going to be covering new discoveries in ancient Egypt. Seems like there's been a lot coming out here lately with new discoveries of ancient tombs, cities of gold, all of these different things. And it's been truly fascinating and wonderful. I've been covering a bit on my TikTok and Instagram on some of my reels, but we're going to do a deep dive into those things this evening. Also, I'm excited to talk about this because this past weekend, when I was in Missouri, Kansas City, for the Missouri Paracon, there were a lot of people that were really genuinely interested in partaking in the tour that we have coming up in November, the Stargates of Ancient Egypt tour, November 11th to the 23rd. It's our third annual tour. Really encourage people to come out to that as well. I have the link down in the description. But yeah, so many people are coming up to my table. Of course, I spoke on portals and stargates. So basically, Portals to the Stars, my most recent book here. But yeah, a lot of real genuine interest that people had in coming along on the Stargates of Ancient Egypt tour. So yeah, go ahead and join us for that. So do want to let those that are listening to the podcast version of this later know that we are live every Wednesday night, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. Please join us out here. You get the full experience with the videos and the slideshow with all the photos and all of that wonderful stuff. 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, connecteduniverseportal.com. Also out there in the Connected Universe portal, you get not only this whole class with the after show, but sneak peek and behind the scenes videos, monthly Q&As, exclusive articles. The monthly Q&A video just came out this morning, by the way. Insider travel blogs, including ancient Egypt, the American Southwest, Ireland, all that wonderful stuff. ConnectedUniversePortal.com, and also back on Patreon. So those things are going to be working hand in hand here. So check out my Patreon page as well. So patreon.com/Mike Ricksecker. Something to that effect. I have the link down there in the description. All right. So let's go ahead and dive right into all this, pleasantries now aside. And see, Scarlett is in the house, and everybody else that was letting me know that I didn't have sound to start this thing off, which is bizarre because I came in here, turned everything on. But yeah, there's Tom and Christina. Great to see you all. Absolutely. Okay. So what are these new discoveries that are occurring in Egypt? Well, what's really interesting is that I was putting this together. Of course, many things have been coming out here lately. And just this morning, when I was doing my Mike's Morning Mug, there was yet another discovery. I mean, it's been like left and right. And this one was of treasure. Usually here, hey, we found a bunch of sarcophagi, or we found some ruins over here or something like that. But this one was actually treasure in a location that has been extensively researched and investigated for over 100 years, and that was at Karnak Temple. So this is really, they consider it the largest religious complex in the world. It is absolutely massive. I've been there 3 times already, and I'm still, every time we go, we hit some other new place. And there'll be times walking through, and it's like, hey, I haven't been over there yet. Yeah, we're not going there this time. Maybe next time. But every single time we go, there's always new things that we are visiting, just in this one temple. So when people wonder about, hey, you keep going to Egypt a lot, it's like, I've really just barely scratched the surface here. So what did they discover? So what they discovered, it was in the northwest corner of this complex. So I'm going to throw up an overhead map here. And it might be, hard to tell what we're looking at, but the primary temple complex is down there. I have it in the lower left-hand corner, and that's the big main temple complex. But if you go straight up from there, you kind of see that slanted corner up there that's the northwest corner. And that is actually an open air museum. The idea is that they're trying to renovate the open air museum better for tourists, to give the tourists a better experience. Because usually, what people do is they go through the main gate here and straight back into like the Holy of Holies. You got this big avenue of columns. You've got the obelisks that are there, and this is really the main draw for people going to Karnak. Well, off to the left-hand side as you walk in, and this is what we usually do first. We go into the first main courtyard, and instead of following all of the traffic, straight down the middle of Karnak Temple, we go off to the left. And in many cases, we're alone. We are the only ones over there. So, have this whole big area with all of this stuff. So, I don't blame them for wanting to renovate this area to draw some more tourism there. So, a lot of it, you have big blocks. They call it an open air museum, but there are many other things around here as well. So in this particular photo, you see that like darker brown building back there. That is actually a shrine for Hatshepsut. Now, we're going to talk about Hatshepsut throughout this evening. She's a very, very important character. And this particular shrine actually has the stargate symbolism on there. But you can see some of these other shrines that are back there as well. And this is around the area where this treasure was found. And it was a French archaeological team. They're back there, working with the Egyptians. And as they are trying to make things more accessible for tourists, they can't just move dirt around and things like this. They have to be very, very careful because they know that there are probably going to be artifacts there under the soil. And sure enough, they found this broken clay pottery that, and it's weird when you read the article on this. Yeah, it was broken, but it was intact. Well, which was it, guys? My guess is that it was like maybe cracked or something like that, but still pretty wholly intact. And when they opened it, they found all of this jewelry, amulets. There was this little gold statue in there. It was really, really beautiful stuff. And this was just in a clay pot that was hidden under the ground. So I want to give you guys a little bit more of an idea of this area of the temple. So I've put together a little video clip, and this is me explaining something that was there on. Again, you see all of these blocks back here. Well, there are some, and you see some of the little buildings back there, the shrines. This is on one of those. And then we get into an actual stargate that is there, which is not the primary focus of this particular class tonight, but you'll get a glimpse of this. All right, I didn't get Mohammed talking about it, but up here, basically, we're seeing the mix of gold, silver into electrum. We're also seeing copper represented here. Basically, this is alchemy, and alchemy originated here in Egypt, Al-Kemet, from the Black Land, and that's really, like, the Ouroboros is supposed to be like the first alchemical symbol. So the origins of the way we transmuted metals and where chemistry came from was here in Egypt. It's a lot of where our mystical arts come from.
Come out or go in. This is as if this is the fifth dimension. So we are going out now. We are going to the third dimension.
There it is.
How we know it's a stargate? Here it is.
Yeah, and we have Pat here, met at Paracon. Great to see you. Thanks for joining us tonight. And yeah, Tom, can't you be there when they find something? I know, that's the thing is, I've been back there 3 different times now. It's going to be 4 here in November. And how many times back in there have we probably walked by this thing? It was right under our feet. Was this pot of all these artifacts? Not that we could have, made off with it or anything like that, but get known for a little discovery or something like that, and maybe get a little finder's fee. That would be nice. But yeah, there are going to be all these other artifacts that are still buried there under the soil, And I was talking with somebody today, and the question was, well, actually, I was talking with Kate today on this, and it was like, couldn't they have gone out there with a metal detector? Yeah, it's like, why not get Gary Drayton out there from Curse of Oak Island with his metal detector? Maybe we'll find some Bobby Dazzlers. And yeah, but apparently now it's really, really fascinating. So, yeah, what I was talking about there at the beginning on that particular block, I found that interesting because there on that particular block, they're talking about, they're really talking about alchemy, the transmutation of gold, copper, all these different elements into other metals and these sorts of things. And it's interesting that you have that there, this inscription on the side of this shrine, when they ultimately find these sorts of things there, right under the ground, right by there. So, is there some sort of relationship there? So I'm really interested to go back in November for the tour and see where they actually discovered this, because the only information that we have right now is northwest corner, but it's a big area, so it'll be interesting to see where that is. So yeah, absolutely, Pat. They're finding things daily, rewriting history, all the time. And so this next bit is something that I have covered here recently, and that is the discovery of the tomb of King Thutmose II. So they discovered this tomb a couple of years ago, but it's in really, really bad shape. As you can see here, there's not much going on. Like this, painting here, you can kind of barely see the stars. There's a lot of rubble and things like this within it. So it was not kept up very well. And they originally thought it was the tomb of a royal consort. They did not know it was the tomb of Thutmose II until very recently here, as they're continuing to sift through all of this stuff. And you can see how much of a wreck it is, that they were finding artifacts with the inscription of Thutmose II, basically stating that this was his tomb. So I have a clip that I'm going to play here, a little bit of an extended clip. And if you caught my video that I posted last week before heading out to the Paracon on this discovery, this is, because it was a short video, and this is most of that video, but very pertinent here for what we are discussing.
For the first time in 100 years, since the discovery of the royal tomb of King Tutankhamun, there has been a discovery of a royal tomb in Egypt, this time Thutmose II. Oh, geez, poor guy. Now, this tomb was originally discovered in October 2022, but they thought at the time that it was the tomb of a royal consort. However, after additional research and looking through artifacts within the tomb itself, they have now announced that no, this was actually the tomb of Thutmose II, which does put it almost exactly 100 years since the discovery of King Tut. That happened November 1922. This tomb was October 2022. His body was later moved back in antiquity and ancient times. So we've already had his mummy, but we didn't know where he was originally buried. And this is his original tomb. Who was Thutmose II? Well, we actually really don't know a lot about him. He was greatly overshadowed by his father, Thutmose I, and his half-sister and wife, Hatshepsut, who later went on to become king herself, along with his son, her stepson, Thutmose III. He married his half-sister Hatshepsut to kind of strengthen his claim to the throne. So when Thutmose II died, Thutmose III was only 2 years old. So Hatshepsut took up rule as king until Thutmose III came of age at 9, which is still pretty young. But even then, they co-ruled together. Now, you may have noticed I've called Hatshepsut a king, and that is the title by which she went by. We call her queen today because she's female, but she never used that title, she went by king. And pharaoh was a Greek word that the ancient Egyptians never used. So Thutmose II, unfortunately, was not kept in high regard. His tomb was put off to the side. Today, for a couple of years, we thought it was the tomb of a royal consort. And also, many of his inscriptions were overwritten by Hatshepsut herself, which is not uncommon. We see in ancient times, Ramses II did this all over the place. There are a lot of things that we cannot date properly because Ramses put his name over everything. Now, if you've been following along with my work, you'll remember that both Hatshepsut and Thutmose III are considered two of our Stargate kings. And one of the most significant Stargate temples that we have, or examples of a Stargate, is Hatshepsut's mortuary temple, which is absolutely beautiful.
We see here beautifully carved falcon. What's interesting about this piece is look along the backside, the railing up the stairs. What does that look like to you? Did I hear somebody say snake? Yeah, snake tail. This may not be the actual original carving. This may have been recarved from a snake, maybe a cobra, but when you have that snake energy running up, you have a perfect picture of energy running up to inside the temple. And when we get up there, we'll see more of that Stargate symbolism, and then it goes straight up into the Holy of Holies. Off on the side here, you see these ruins back here. This is the base of an ancient pyramid. And it could be that pre-diluvians built a pyramid here, and then the dynastics coming in later took the ruins and built a temple. So you have a pyramid harnessing energy here. You have the snakes bringing the energy up into the temple there. And we'll see when we go inside why they're doing that.
So what was it they knew that Thutmose II didn't? So even though Thutmose II wasn't kept in high regard, this is still a fascinating discovery. And again, our first royal tomb discovery in 100 years.
Yeah, I included the bit there about the Stargate at Hatshepsut's temple just to kind of emphasize the fact that, Thutmose II was really just kind of almost like a discarded king. He died very young. He was like around 30 years old when he passed. He had some sort of ailment and died of an illness. But he was really just cast aside from all the other kings of that era. So when we look at where he was buried, so the there where the ruined pyramid was, basically that kind of cliff wall. When we look at this is not that map, this one, you can see it's way up there. That was the royal cache where the bodies were found, but his actual original tomb, you can see here, Valley of the Kings, Valley of the Queens, and then way back there, excavation site where the tomb was found. So when we look at Hatshepsut's temple, you have that cliff there. It's on the other side of that where the Valley of the Kings is, to give you some sort of context. And basically to the left here is where the royal cache was. Now, his body was moved in antiquity. So somebody went out there to his tomb like long after the fact and brought his body to this royal cache near Hatshepsut's temple. But the original burial was way out there, while Hatshepsut, Thutmose III, even Thutmose the first, the one, nice, Valley of the Kings, right back behind Hatshepsut's temple. But Thutmose II was way out there, and he didn't have this nice, big, glorious tomb like these others. So, what in the world happened back in antiquity that it's like they didn't like this guy, right? So, so this royal cache, what happened was, you had a lot of these tombs that were being raided. So they knew, like Ramses and all of these others, the whole succession, they were being looted. And the general consensus is that those who were, basically the workers who built the tombs, knew where the tombs were and how to get into them because they built them. And then long after they had the procession and the kings were buried, they would come back after the fact and rob the tombs. And so a lot of these bodies of the pharaohs, well, they never called them pharaohs again, they called them kings, were being not necessarily vandalized, but they weren't, they weren't being taken care of, because people were rummaging around inside the sarcophagi and other things to try to, get whatever loot or items might have been in there. So it was, say his name correctly, Herhor was his name. He was an Egyptian army officer and vizier, eventually a ruler of Upper Egypt during the reign of Ramses the 11th. And what he called it was renewing the burial places. So Ramses the First, Seti the First, Ramses the Second, had been pillaged, and they and the others as well, and they took all of those bodies and put them in there. So the Thutmoses were in there as well, and so he wanted to make sure there's like up to 50 mummies that were discovered in there, and you can go see them now at the Egyptian Civilization Museum. So he at least wanted to preserve the bodies there in at least in one particular location. And so, so we've had the body of Thutmose II for quite a while, but we never knew where his original tomb was. He wasn't there in the Valley of the Kings like so many of these others. He was, again, way back there behind the Valley of the Queens. And because of the general location, they thought the tomb was a royal consort's until they started finding some of these artifacts. So kind of crazy, but there you go. There you have it. So, all right. Questions, comments? Hey, Sage Sleuth is in the house. All right. Tom. So if on a tour we accidentally discover a treasure, would we be able to claim it? No, you can't. You can't claim it. Sorry. Like I said, there might be some sort of finder's fee involved, but you won't be able to claim it. That has to be given to the Department of Antiquities. Like everything that they're finding now, let's go back up to the treasures. All of these, they are going to be put on display at the museum in Luxor. So, and these are, I didn't even really cover what these were. So we have rings made of gold and other metals, small golden amulets. There's the Triad statue. The deities on that are Amun, Mut, and Khonsu. There's a metallic brooch, amulets of deities in animal shape, and numerous beads, which are gold plated. So all that is going to be put on display in Luxor. So it's a fantastic find. But very, very recent. It showed up in my feed this morning, but I guess it was February 28th when they finally released that information. Speaking of gold and treasure, so one of the other things that was discovered a few years ago, but they're being a bit more vocal about it now because they have completed the excavation, and that is what they are calling Egypt's City of Gold. So this is actually known as Aten, and this is still in the same area. This is like right down the road from Hatshepsut's temple. So if you look on the map here, they call it Dazzling Aten. If you just go up the road to the northeast, you have Hatshepsut's mortuary temple. So all of this is right around the same area. You see Karnak right there across the river. They don't have Hatshepsut's temple labeled here, but it's right there directly across the river. In fact, when you walk down that staircase out of Hatshepsut's mortuary temple, you have a wonderful view right across the valley, across the water, and it's a straight line into the Holy of Holies at the Temple of Karnak. So it's wonderful. It's absolutely amazing. So yeah, this Egypt city of gold, city of Aten. I mean, what this is, it's a 3,000-year-old gold mining hub, and it includes homes, workshops, administrative buildings, temples, bathhouses. It features a fully equipped gold extraction facility, grinding stations, filtration basins, sedimentation pools, all of this stuff. It dates back to the time of Amenhotep III. Now, he's in that line with all these others, like Thutmose III, second, Hatshepsut, all them. He's also the father of Akhenaten. So, Akhenaten is, the famous one that brought monotheism to Egypt. A lot of people didn't like that. And he was, once he died, he was hidden away for, many, many years, like all of his, any of his cartouches, statues, they were hidden. The ones that followed him did not want him to be known. And it was, what are they doing? They were trying to do some restoration work on some pillars or something like that, and they found records of him in like the filler that was used. I mean, really bizarre. But then Akhenaten would be the father of King Tutankhamun and so forth. So yeah, important part of the line for sure. So and we're looking at about 1391 to 1353 BC, and they're considering it now to be the largest ancient city ever discovered in North Africa. So really, really fascinating. Yeah, I don't know how much is actually accessible to the public at this point, but it's not like, I mean, we're looking at these ruins here, it's not like when we're looking at, say, Karnak or Hatshepsut's temple, big, huge monuments like this. These were, they were industrial buildings, they were homes, they were more of kind of like the more the common area that people would use. So, but yeah. City of Gold, this just came out I want to say earlier this week, because I just posted on this the other day. So and yes, Carly, your name could be mentioned if you discovered it. Yes, absolutely. So all right, that is the City of Gold, and we're still going to stay on we're still going to stay on Thutmose, the Thutmose line for a while. We've had a lot of this, and it seems to be, it's interesting to me that we seem to be finding a lot of this material related to this line. We were talking 18th dynasty, so something is very important about that era. But and this also is not going to be like a big temple, but it's still important, and that is this. They're calling it a rest house. So these ruins here, and this was last year. And so basically what we're looking at here, this is the North Sinai Peninsula. Tel Habwa is the name of the archaeological site. And it was a rest house for Thutmose III. Now, Thutmose III, he was considered Thutmose the Great. So he led great military campaigns and won all sorts of battles. And he expanded the Egyptian kingdom into a large international empire. So he really greatly expanded the kingdom. So he would have to march his armies, out of Egypt, across the Sinai Peninsula, and into the Middle East. And we're talking from Cairo to this location is about 100 miles. So yeah, when people talking about the tour and they're asking questions about it, some people are skittish because of all that stuff that's going on, Israel, Palestine, Hamas, all that stuff. And Egypt wants like nothing to do with it. They've got their eastern borders closed. They're out of the whole thing. And plus, everywhere that we go with the tour is so far away from there. Yeah, you're talking about 100 miles to get to the Sinai Peninsula, and then you got to go across the peninsula to even get to that area. So yeah, we are completely out of harm's way. And like I said, Egypt's staying out of it anyway. So he's marching his armies up there to go invade and claim more lands for Egypt. And so they had to have different rest stops along the way. And this was one of them. So what they say is included here. Now, I found a hieroglyphic inscription on the structures, which indicates this was used by Thutmose III. But it includes 2 halls that were once supported with limestone columns. So you can kind of see the bases of the columns in the photo here. And so you kind of have to imagine this is long since ruined, but connect to these different rooms. And this was the name of the road was actually the Horus Road, which was an ancient Egyptian path that stretched across the Sinai Peninsula and has a number of other military structures along it as well. So yeah, this is where they would rest during the campaigns. And they say that what they also found was fortifications with the surrounding wall later on with an east-facing main gate. So yeah, really, what do we call it when I was there with Mohammed? Because yeah, this was discovered a little bit earlier last year, and we were out there in Egypt on tour in April, and we were talking about maybe one of the places that we would eventually go, not right now, is to the Sinai, because there's some interesting locations there that that tie back into our stargates, like a lot of the old ancient mines that are out there. This was actually when, for those that were at the Paracon this past weekend and watched my Portals and Stargates lecture. So when Mohammed was talking about the white cakes from turquoise land, so from Mufkut's land, that the white cakes are actually head shait. But yeah, so that land is actually in the Sinai Peninsula. This is where, yeah, they would mine turquoise, they would mine gold, they would mine copper, and all these other different elements. And so it would be wonderful to go out there at some point to have that tie-in back to our stargates. Well, Thutmose III was one of those Stargate kings. So we've been talking Thutmose III, we've been talking Hatshepsut. These are a couple of our Stargate kings. There were 5 of them. And that's why I said in that particular video, it's like, well, what did they know that Thutmose II didn't? Because he was just cast off to the side, and you have these others that, Thutmose III was basically the general for Hatshepsut. And then of course they co-ruled, but there was a time there where it was Hatshepsut's armies and Thutmose III was leading them. Now there seems to be a lot of interesting, animosity between some of these different characters. Again, Thutmose II being cast off to the side, but a lot of people attributed Hatshepsut's image being etched off, a lot of her reliefs and things like this on the walls of the temples to Thutmose III. But I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, because you see that the two of them like built things like next to each other, or were part of the same complex. Like they each have parts there at Karnak, different shrines and temples and obelisks and these sorts of things. So it's not like Thutmose just knocked all of her stuff down, or Elephantine Island. On the top of the hill there, you have a temple built by Hatshepsut. Down the hill, you have a temple built by Thutmose III. And so they really did keep this kind of co-rule thing going together. So I don't believe it was Thutmose III that etched off her image. So my personal opinion. But yeah, Thutmose III was one of these really, really significant characters back then, and one of our Stargate kings. So Scarlett, where are the people that aren't royal buried? So, yeah, there are. I mean, there are other cemeteries, or would it be necropoli? Is that the plural of necropolis? That are around. So, um, yeah, there are like some of the different nobles. Like the nobles weren't there buried with the kings; they were buried elsewhere, and they had their own tombs. And then, yeah, you also had graves and this sort of thing for the commoners as well. So, yeah, you didn't have the big elaborate tombs like the kings did, but others that maybe there were scribes or some of these other things that had their own like little smaller areas and smaller tombs. But yeah, that's why, and we're about to get to it here in a moment. That's why you find a lot of these archaeologists that are now, digging these things up and discovering more and more and more. So, and thank you, Pamela. I appreciate you being there. Yes, I remember you. You came by the table and we chatted for a little while, and you had that fascinating story about the ball. I remember. Let's see. So Pat is asking, did they find another old city that produced gold a little further south that may have supplied gold to the kings? There have been some other gold producing locations, and like I said, across the Red Sea there and Sinai Peninsula. So there are other sites like this. This one they're really excited about because of how huge it is. It is an absolutely massive site. Like I said, they're calling it like the largest city discovered in Northern Africa. So what the cutoff is on that, like how far down the continent before you get to say something in South Africa, I don't know. But they're saying it's the largest city, ancient city discovered in North Africa. So, all right. Talking about sarcophagi and burials and these sorts of things. This one's a little bit older, but I want to talk about it a bit because it is controversial. And that is all those sarcophagi that were found in Saqqara. So, and they were very, very numerous. This was very controversial because they essentially raided this cache of sarcophagi, and I understand to a degree why you would do this. This was May 2022. It's 250 sealed sarcophagi from what they're now calling the Cemetery of Sacred Animals. Originally, it was called the I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation, Babastion, which is basically a reference to the Egyptian goddess Bast, who was worshipped in the form of a cat, because there were so many mummified cats and these sorts of things there. But they have continued to discover other animals that were mummified and placed there. So now they're calling it the Cemetery of the Animals. But yeah, I understand that. Well, multiple fronts here. They do want to learn more about the ancient Egyptian culture, and there is a lot that we still don't understand and are continuing to try to learn about. So that's in part. Also, grave robbing still happens today. There is a very, very deep black market for antiquities. And I've talked before about, like the Dendara Crypt, when they're taking those blocks out and they're auctioning them off to the highest bidder. We've also had our archaeologist friend, Dr. Heather Lynn, on here telling her story about a collector that got on a Zoom call with her, asking her information about an item that had been missing in antiquity. And for the call, he was just trying to find out, more information about it. And she's looking behind him. It's like the item's right back there. And it's supposed to be a missing item from antiquity. It's like, what the heck? So yeah, there is a black market for antiquities. that runs very, very deep, and people are still, robbing these sites today. So, there is a degree of preservation here, that they are taking these out before somebody else does. Um, and that's kind of a scary thought, because you are essentially, unearthing all of these cemeteries. You're going to have all of these bodies. Where do you store them and lock them up at, if, not in the ground? I mean, imagine going out to your local cemetery today and digging everybody up. And what are you going to do with them? What are you going to do with all these coffins? But yeah, part of it is to prevent the grave robbery as well. But yeah, when it happened, there was a bit of an outcry of how many of these that they actually dug up. So 250, and there's more. There's hundreds more that they have actually dug up as well. So Sakara's got so much going on. So they also, this cache also included about 150 bronze statues of different deities, different sizes, portraying like Anubis, Osiris, Isis, Hathor, and so many more. One example that was given of things that were found, and these are wooden idols of Isis and Nephthys, but you can see they have gold faces on them. So even though they're carved wooden blocks, they are gilded in gold on the faces. And so the way that these were positioned, one was at the head of the coffin, and other was by the foot of the coffin. And these are there was a ceremony that the ancient Egyptians would hold, in which you had these mourners or weepers. In fact, when we just had the show, The Unbelievable with Dan Aykroyd, I filmed for the episode Odd Jobs. I filmed for a number of episodes with him, and I filmed for that particular episode and talked on a number of different things. And I wasn't included in the episode when it aired, which was kind of bizarre. I was like, I talked about all these different stories. And one of them was the mourners. And the Egyptian mourners, where these women would go be in garb portraying Isis and Nephthys, and would go and mourn for the people who had passed. And so this setup had one at the foot, one at the head, and also they found within the same coffin a very large papyrus scroll, about 10 yards long, that they believe, they're still doing some research on it, believes contains a version of the Book of the Dead, which the Book of the Dead, it's kind of it's really misnamed. There's a German archaeologist that named it that 100 years ago, and the name is kind of stuck. It's the Book of Going Forth by Day, and basically they're just different spells and prayers and incantations for the person who has passed. So like the most famous one is the Papyrus of Ani, and it's the longest one that we have. It's the most beautifully ornate, and within it, it's his afterlife journey. So he's there, Ani with his wife Tutu, and they're going through the afterlife. And so I've used that as an example for like when I do my lecture on time travel, because of the way it talks about the layering of time within there. And Ani, again, dead throughout this whole narrative, is asking the creator god Atum, how long will be the span of my life? Which is a really bizarre question for somebody who is dead. The ancient Egyptians did not believe in the afterlife like we do and have over the past couple thousand years. We always, well, I won't say we all, but I guess the most common belief has been, we die and we have some other life somewhere else, and that's it. And not even really a life, but we live our death somewhere else. And so we consider that the afterlife. The Egyptians really didn't believe that. They believed that their life continued, that you're just you're losing the body, but your life is still continuing on afterward, and would eventually come back here in a body. So they did believe in reincarnation. So that's why you see the symbolism of the Ouroboros being used, because they wanted the recycling renewal of the life. But you were basically just taking a journey to the constellation of Orion, and the kings would become stars and these sorts of things. So yeah, it's a really, really interesting belief system that they had. So yeah, it's not really the Book of the Dead, but yeah, Book of Going Forth by Day. So so is that the chamber they believe leads to Cleopatra? So there's a lot of interesting Cleopatra ideas. We don't know where she's at. So when you had that sacking of Alexandria, she basically went missing. The whole thing with the snakes and all that. Was that just a story? Was it true? There's a big debate about that. There's trying to remember her name, but she was a lawyer, and she believed that, and she's still working on the site. That she knows where Cleopatra is buried. And there's a fantastic documentary on it. It was I think it was an episode of Secrets of the Dead, and she believed that this one particular temple has the tomb of Cleopatra, and they only had a certain number of days, like a permit to go there and do some preliminary investigations. Very, very difficult for anybody to get permission to do excavations in Egypt. And she got like a temporary permission for like whatever number of days. And they had gotten down to the last day, and they finally found something, in relation to her that was enough to give some additional permission to keep going. She found some like really fascinating, underground rooms and tunnels and all kinds of stuff in this place. And she's still working on that. So, yeah. So, all right, everyone. I really appreciate the conversation this evening. There's a lot more discoveries that are always coming out of Egypt, and you're following me on social media, you will see, my Mike's Morning Mug. A lot of times they end up being related to Egypt because there's so much that's been coming out of there. And I really do encourage people to join us for the Stargates of Ancient Egypt tour. Again, I have the link down in the description below. And yeah, it's just such a life-changing adventure out there. And we go to so many of these places and discover things that have been lost in time. We haven't discovered the treasure yet, but there are other discoveries that we have made along the way, and we'll continue to do so. So, all right, that will wrap it up for this evening. Those that are listening to the podcast version, again, please join us every Wednesday night, 8:00 p.m. Eastern Time, connecteduniverseportal.com. Check us out there. Check us out on the Patreon, the YouTube Live. We're all over. Till next time, everyone. If time really exists. Oh, and for those part of the portal, stick around for the after show.